So in this video, I'm going to explain to you how hypnotherapy can help you overcome many of your obstacles in your life. Moments often when you really want to do something. Maybe you want to be healthier, you want to eat better, you want to exercise. Maybe you want to be more balanced in your relationships and not feel so needy or explosive and get into arguments. Or maybe you just want to be more focused and successful in your business and career life. And so I'm going to show you over the next 5 minutes or so how hypnotherapy can be that missing piece to the puzzle that enables you to build that picture of your future life. And kind of when it comes up with clients, it's that they want to create a behavior, but they just feel stuck and they don't know how. And so I'm just going to use this model here to explain what's actually happening in your mind and how I can help you overcome it. So we have here the conscious mind. We've got the human head, this beautiful picture here. And we have the conscious mind, this top part. And this is the part that runs about, give or take, about 10% of your actual daily life. So not much of what you do is conscious, even though we might believe it to be so. And I'll explain how that works. So the conscious mind works with analysis, with thinking and planning things, has short-term memory. So if I ask you to remember a telephone number, then you will remember it in your short-term conscious mind. It also helps with reasoning and with willpower. And if we want to get things done, willpower can only go so far. And normally, if there's deeper patterns, deeper associations, which I'll explain in a moment, then willpower won't be enough. And that's why we try and try and try. And we can maybe do it for a little while, maybe eat healthy for a little while, or we can be more communicative with our partner, but eventually the willpower gets eroded and we go back to our old patterns. So that's the conscious mind here. Then we have the critical mind, or the critical factor as it's called. I'll explain what that is in a minute. It's basically a protector, a gatekeeper, a firewall that decides what information comes through from the conscious mind and externally from what we see, hear and feel, and enters the unconscious mind. Now, this is really the juggernaut of how you make your decisions. This is the control room. This is the motherboard. This is where about 90% of your decisions are made. So, for example, lots of things like bodily functions, your heart is beating, that's controlled by your unconscious mind. Normally when you're breathing, you're not normally conscious of it. It's by your unconscious mind. Maybe when you've driven home from work and you've done that drive so many times, it's in your long-term memory. So your unconscious mind, maybe you've driven home from work and suddenly you arrive home and you're like, oh, how did I get here? And that's because your unconscious mind or your subconscious took over and you are no longer conscious of what's happening. And that's what happens all the time, day to day, is that our unconscious mind is running things for us. And I'll explain exactly how that works and how it's impacting your life on a day-to-day basis and stopping you from kind of creating the behaviors and habits in life that you want. So in our unconscious mind, this is developed from a young age, kind of from about 0 to 7. Much of our long-term patterns are created and we make positive and negative associations. So in the unconscious mind, there's long-term memory, things that have happened before. Maybe you've had something positive in your life or negative, and that's created an emotion or a feeling attached around that, which then creates habits and patterns. So I'll give you an example. When you were younger, you may have been around dogs a lot and you created positive associations with dogs. And so you have a long-term memory of spending time with dogs. You get a nice positive feeling, which creates a habit and a relationship pattern with dogs that is positive. So if you see a dog, comes up to you, you call it over, you stroke it, you feel good. You have reinforcement from your long-term memories that that dog is most likely friendly and you enjoy being around dogs. It makes you feel happy. Now, some people might have had a negative association with a dog when they were younger. And if they have a negative association when they were younger from a long-term memory, the dog comes over and they get a feeling very different from the other person who had a positive association. They get a feeling in the pit of their stomach, their heart starts to race, and they just don't enjoy the experience. Now, here's where hypnotherapy comes in. So let's say someone says to me, a client, I really want to just be able to enjoy being around dogs. I know consciously that dogs generally aren't dangerous. They're all domesticated, they're friendly. I can see if a dog's wagging its tail and it looks friendly and it's been playing with other adults and children around. So if that happens, then I'd really like you to enable me to feel good emotions, have a positive association around it. Now, without hypnotherapy, that person can try all they want. They can attempt to have a good feeling, use their willpower, really think about it. But no matter what they do, and this is analogous to problems with trying to, eat healthy and exercise, but you're just not doing it. You don't have that good feeling attached to it. No matter what that person does, they still have that negative association hardwired into the programming in their mind. So what we can do with hypnotherapy is we can change that. Through hypnotherapy, you can do things like relaxation, confusion, shock, all sorts of fun, interesting things in the session, obviously with your permission. And what happens is it relaxes this thing called the critical mind, or the critical factor, this dotted line here. And this dotted line, as I said, is like the firewall. Imagine a computer, and it decides, you get those little pop-ups on your computer. Would you like to let this app have access to the system? And so I can kind of relax this area, which means when you're in this relaxed state, I can make suggestions. I can go back and kind of alter long-term memories. So for example, that dog, the negative memory, it might be that you implant the idea and suggest that, well, maybe that was one dog, or one-off. And just like with anything, some things can go wrong, be dangerous, but it doesn't mean that every dog is dangerous and bad. So we relax this critical mind, this critical factor, and we go directly through. And I speak to you and I tell you stories and make suggestions that change that negative association and feeling of the dog, or being a healthy person, or whatever it might be. And I make it a positive association. So now this person the client might have a feeling of, oh, there was one dog once that was a bit rough with me. However, I really, on an unconscious level, understand and feel that dogs are friendly, dogs are kind. And so what will happen is the next time, as time goes on, the system will update itself after the session. The client will notice changes. They'll notice that maybe they look at dogs as the dog's walking by, and they no longer have that negative emotion and feeling, because the long-term memory has been changed internally. The memory might not have changed itself, but the way they perceive and see the memory has changed, which then means internally they are positively associated to dogs. And they're still aware that maybe a dog could be dangerous, but it's more a way of seeing things as an adult. And they realize that actually the dog's friendly, and this dog looks friendly and it's wagging its tail, so I'm sure it's fine to stroke it. And they feel comfortable and relaxed. And then as this happens more and more and more over time with this new behavior and pattern, then that feeling gets solidified and they feel better and better around dogs. Now, this is an example of a dog, but we can do this with anything. So if you're wanting to change your eating patterns, you may have a positive association with actually being unhealthy. You may have grown up and your mum or dad fed you really bad food, and they really showed you love when they did it, and they showed you praise when you ate a big unhealthy bit of cake, as an example. Now you've now made an association that you get love as a child, a long-term memory, and a feeling attached that if I eat well, that's not good. But if I eat badly, if I eat that cake and that bad food, then that's one I've got to love. So I have a positive association with it. So what we can do is we can change that. Again, we can decide what you want to feel. I want to feel like a healthy person, you might say. So I'll make suggestions that actually the unhealthy food is more of a negative association. So as time goes by, you see that big unhealthy cake. Maybe you just know that one bit of cake is fine, but when you start getting to 2, 3, and a whole cake, then you start having a negative association with it. Maybe you kind of see the future as if you keep eating, then it's going to be bad for you. It may be bad for children that you have in your life or people that you care for. And you start instead, I make suggestions of, actually healthy foods are positive. Maybe it'll give me a life that I really, really want. Maybe it will give me a feeling of confidence, which means I can go out and meet the person that I really want to be with and have a family and feel confident and successful at work. So we can change these associations. And when we change these associations deep down, these emotions linked to memory, and we change the habits and the patterns, well, now these are running all the time. And as I said, the unconscious mind is doing 90% of your decisions. So once it's here, you don't need effort and willpower. It's then just running that positive association with food, that positive association with dogs. And you start to just notice things in your life. I'm eating better. I seem to be going stroking dogs more. And so this is how, through a session with hypnosis, we can initially start to make those big, deep, unconscious changes that will help you with those things that you've been challenged with for so long, where you've wanted to create a new pattern, a new relationship, a new habit, a new behavior, and to feel different about it. But it's just been so many years maybe that you just haven't been able to.